Today, we'll be answering a rather important question. Does HIPAA apply to schools and educational institutions? HIPAA stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. It states that there needs to be national standards in place protecting sensitive patient health information from being disclosed without the patient's consent. We're going to break down whether HIPAA applies to student health information and how schools can keep their students' health information compliant. I'm Alex here with Jotform. Let's get into it. Now, schools, of course, do need to collect and store certain information for legal reasons, including student records, financial accounts, and employee credentials. But what about information that doesn't fall perfectly into a legal category? Like, what if a student is examined by an on-site doctor? Or if a student gets a vaccination from the school nurse? Is their health data protected under HIPAA or FERPA? Both protect personal data, but they protect different types of data. So, when are schools subject to HIPAA's data protection requirements? Well, when it comes to schools, FERPA, or the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, supersedes HIPAA. While HIPAA protects personal health information, FERPA protects all of the information held in a student's record. This could be anything from grades or disciplinary action. FERPA only applies to schools that receive funding from the government. So, FERPA doesn't protect private schools from HIPAA requirements. Also, it's important to keep in mind that FERPA only protects student information. So any health services provided to your employees or any non-students is protected under HIPAA. Okay, let's make this a bit simpler. If you're protected under FERPA, then you don't have to worry about HIPAA. Other than that, you follow HIPAA's data protection requirements. Make sense? However, if your school is a covered entity, then you may need to follow HIPAA's coding regulations. To be considered a covered entity, all healthcare transactions must be completed electronically, such as billing a health plan for treatment given to a student. Your school must also employ the organization or people providing treatment. For instance, a pharmacist providing vaccinations on school grounds does not make your school a HIPAA-covered entity if they are not your employee. All public schools and universities are subject to FERPA's data regulations, which affects how HIPAA is applied. This means that schools have to meet a specific set of requirements to be considered HIPAA compliant. How do schools follow HIPAA regulations? It's pretty simple overall. If your school is protected under FERPA, but is still considered a HIPAA-covered entity, then you would follow FERPA for your students' health information and HIPAA for electronic transactions. How can you do that? Always consult a legal expert to see which laws apply to your case. Your school may not even count as a HIPAA-covered entity. You may even have to follow certain legal regulations because of the healthcare service that you provide. If you are a covered entity, make sure to comply with the HIPAA transactions, code sets, and identifier rules. These rules simplify healthcare transactions, but utilize HIPAA's standard format for coding electronic claims. Follow FERPA's information regulations. This means restricting access to your students' educational records, letting them know when you will include them in the school directory, and allowing them to opt out. Lastly, if you are subject to HIPAA's privacy rule, protect any information that's considered personal health information. To do this, use secure channels that can encrypt your data to receive and send PHI. It's important to know how HIPAA and FERPA apply to your school. To put it plainly, when you're protected under FERPA, you don't deal with HIPAA. And if you're not, then you need to follow HIPAA's data protection requirements. Private schools are not covered under FERPA, so they need to follow HIPAA's rules and regulations. Now, if your school is a HIPAA-covered entity, then you could be subject to HIPAA's coding regulations. When considered a covered entity, your school would have to complete healthcare transactions electronically and employ the organization or people providing treatment for your students. If they are not employed by your school, then your school is not a covered entity. When following HIPAA regulations, there are certain steps that you can take. Consult a legal expert and find out if your school is a HIPAA-covered entity. Comply with HIPAA transactions, code sets, and identifier rules by using HIPAA's standard format for coding. Follow FERPA information regulations if they apply to your school. And finally, if you're subject to HIPAA's privacy rule, protect any information that's considered personal health information. Running an educational institution takes a lot of work and requires recording a lot of sensitive information. When you follow the right laws and regulations, you'll keep your students and your organization safe. Jotform has tools and resources that make this process easier. You can find our secure online forms at jotform.com. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this video to be helpful. Until next time, I'm Alex from Jotform, and I'll see you later.